All right, welcome to your last U-Try of Module 8, Lesson 1. So we're going to take a look at one more statistical scenario and see what kind of conclusions that you can make from the scenario. What I'd like you to do is please take a minute and read the scenario on the next page. Pause the recording while you read and think about the question. After you have read the scenario, please determine what conclusion you can make from the scenario and for what population. Also, just keep in mind, remember that you could also potentially not make a conclusion from the scenario if the sample was not randomly chosen. So just be careful about that. Read your question carefully, and if you need to, on your guided notes, highlight important pieces of information from the scenario. So what conclusions can be made from the given study? With the growing use of technology by students in the classroom, many educators believe that students rely solely on technology to solve even the simplest of problems. Their ability to analyze and solve in-depth problems has decreased significantly. Anything longer than the length of a tweet means that the students often lose interest in the task at hand. Researchers decided to test whether or not banning cell phones increased math scores and critical thinking skills. In the state of North Carolina, they randomly chose 15 high schools to test. At those 15 high schools, the researchers allowed half of the math classes to have cell phones and computers in class, and in the other half of the math classes, the cell phones were collected at the beginning of class. The researchers then gave a pretest to all math classes at the 15 high schools to test the students' critical thinking skills. The teachers at the 15 high schools taught a set curriculum for 3 weeks. At the end of 3 weeks, the students were given the same test again. Researchers compared the results from the classes that were allowed technology versus those that were not allowed technology. They found at the end of 3 weeks the proportion of students that were able to answer the critical thinking questions in the non-technology classrooms was 66%, and the proportion of students in the technology questions was 60%. We want to know, did taking away the students' cell phones increase their critical thinking skills? So think about this, what conclusions can be made and for what population. So think about that for a second and then move on to the next page when you're ready to check your answer. So let's think about this. The sample was 15 high schools in North Carolina. Therefore, the conclusion can only be made for math students in North Carolina high schools, and it does state that they were randomly chosen. So since the sample was 15 randomly chosen high schools, then I can make a conclusion for the entire population of North Carolina high schools. Remember that a random selection means I'm going to have a mini population of all the North Carolina high schools. So this would probably ensure that I get high schools that are in rural areas and suburban areas, maybe from low income and high income communities. The proportion of students that got the critical thinking questions correct from banned technology and technology was 66% and 60%. This does not necessarily seem like a huge difference in critical thinking skills when the difference was only 6%. So we would say, since there's not a large difference in the proportions of students that did better on the critical thinking skills without technology, based on this information, we can't make a conclusion that taking away technology made a difference in critical thinking skills. So if you're interested in learning more about statistics, there is a test that we can run that will be able to tell us whether or not that it in fact made a difference or did not make a difference. Now, after working through this first module in statistics, I hope you realize that statistics is one of the most useful areas of mathematics to study. Check out this article below to see how one doctor said that statistics was the most important class that he took in college.